Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the booth. I'm Gabby Sparks, joined today by Luis Scott Vargas, and we are heading into round 7. Here we set Evan Buchholz versus Dave Shiels. Both players are currently sitting at 6-0, undefeated this round. And Luis, tell us a little bit about this matchup.
So, given that red-green energy is able to go over the top of blockers, it's going to matter a lot more if Dave Shiels, who's playing black-green Delirium, can put together good removal spells. And because Dave is on a slightly more controlling list, we see like 3 copies of Ishkanah, Distended Mindbender, Emrakul, the Promised Land, all the heavy hitters. It's going to be a lot more about Dave trying to control the match rather than a straight-up race. Kind of a litmus test whether black-green is aggressive or not is, are they playing Smuggler's Copter? And
fair enough.
The answer in this particular case is that no, Dave is not playing Smuggler's Copter.
Feels like Blossoming Defend is also that card that helps you decide whether or not they're being really aggressive, is when they're trying to protect their creatures.
Yeah, Blossom Defense, another pretty easy way to tell. Like, if they've got Blossoming Defense in their deck, they mean to attack. If they don't, then there's a lot more chance that they're leaning more on Traverse and Grapple and Emrakul.
It's a game trail coming down for Evan, and here we get to see Voltaic Brawler providing some energy, and is also a very good attacker, especially uncontested on this board.
So it looks like Evan is playing a more mid-range energy deck, so not actually playing Electrostatic Pummeler, so no doubling today.
All right.
But it is an aggressive deck. It's kind of more what Brian Kibler played at the Pro Tour. Basically, just good quality energy guys, Lothnu Hellions, Verdurous Gearhulk, just ways to attack your opponent that utilize energy without going all in on cards like Larger Than Life.
Mm-hmm. So Servant of the Conduit is the follow-up. That Voltaic Brawler was... it came to an end. Its days came to an end. It was grasped by darkness. And then after that, we're going to see a pass back to Dave.
Grasp of Darkness might be just the best removal spell in Standard right now. It's just every black deck seems to play 4. And it's because it's just so unconditional. It kills almost everything you need to kill.
Yeah, there's so many creatures that just like destroys. It's also nice that it just owns Avacyn.
Yeah, Avacyn, killing their 5-mana card with a 2-mana card is always just, that's one way to win at Magic. So you spend 2 mana to their 5, you're gonna end up ahead very quickly. Triple Swamp from Dave does indicate that he doesn't have a forest.
Well, Pilgrim's Eye is coming to the rescue.
Yeah, Pilgrim's Eye, surprisingly played card in this particular environment.
Wait, maybe not. He is choosing to get a swamp.
Wow, the 4th swamp. Okay. So,
what do you make of this if you're Evan?
If you're Evan, first of all, you might think your opponent's playing mono black, but that seems unlikely. So, it is likely that your opponent is wanting to make 2 Grasps of Darkness on the next turn, or maybe set up a turn where Kalitas plus Grasp in a couple turns, or Murder plus or Grasp, Ruinous Path plus Grasp, something that involves black. Yeah.
The casual mono black Pilgrim's Eye deck. Not something that you see at a 6-0 bracket, especially at a GP.
See, looks like Evan is utilizing one of the better energy cards here with the Bristling Hydra. As Dave Shiels takes a look. So we'll be seeing Bristling Hydra momentarily, but it is 3 energy to give it +1/+1 counter and hexproof until end of turn. And this is one of the bigger payoffs because it uses all your energy, kind of like Whirler Virtuoso without spending mana. Also is very resilient to removal spells.
The other really nice thing is that, like a lot of the cards that have energy, they have the clause of it has to attack, and when it attacks, then you get to choose if you want to do it. With something like Bristling Hydra, they just get to do it whenever they want. So it's got nice protection against the black deck. So Kalitas coming down for Dave Shiels.
He's still pretending to be mono black. He's got his forest lurking in hand. So he does have green. This is not a surprise. I mean, that Pilgrim's Eye would have gotten a forest otherwise, but Kalitas is certainly one of the more powerful cards that he could have played on 4.
Looks like another Bristling Hydra is a draw for Evan.
And having all those energy sources keeps Evan well hydrated, as it were, because all the energy cards stack together nicely, including multiple copies of Bristling Hydra.
Well hydrated? Hydrated.
Well.
Hydrated.
Well, hydrated.
All right. All right, so Harness Lightning will be able to take care of this Kalitas.
And Harness Lightning is one of the better removal spells, because in the energy deck, it's basically 2 mana, just kill a creature, straight up that. And sometimes you end up with energy left over. Sometimes you do what you do here, which you spend an extra energy, but either way, you get a great deal.
Incendiary Flow, also going to be taking down this Pilgrim's Eye. Seems like it might be a little bit of overkill, but Evan wants to get aggressive here.
And there's a really interesting reason why Evan would choose to play out the turn that way, especially since he had a Shaundra, Torch of Defiance in hand and could have just killed a Kalitas. It's that he's worried about Dave emerging a Distended Mindbender.
All right.
And taking Pilgrim's Eye off the table means that Dave's just not going to be able to do that. So it's a heads-up play from Evan. It's playing around future cards that you haven't even seen yet. You don't even know if your opponent's playing this card. But it is much safer because Mindbender would be pretty annoying for Evan, and taking away Dave's capability of doing that while also exiling the artifact means that Delirium's farther away. So overall, that turn worked out quite well for Evan.
Well, it's basically what you were mentioning in an earlier round when you're saying, look, when you're at a Grand Prix and you're playing against a player and you see something like Swamp, Kalitas, Grasp of Darkness, and a Pilgrim's Eye. You can expect something like Distended Mindbender, right?
Pilgrim's Eye with a bunch of swamps reads really loudly Mindbender to me. There's not very many decks in these last 2 standard formats that played Pilgrim's Eye and 0 Emerge creatures. They're just such a natural pairing.
So Ishkana coming down, unfortunately, does not get to bring a little army of spiders with it. It is on blocking duty now. Bristling Hydra getting in there.
With no fear. Remember, with 8 energy, Bristling Hydra can hit for 6 at most. And at some point, Evan has to give thought to just using counters up ahead of time, just putting a ++1 counter.
Just to attack for more?
But the disadvantage is the hexproof's only temporary with the Hydra, so he is choosing to conserve his counters in the face of potential removal spells from Dave.
So the follow-up is going to be a Shaundra for Evan. All right, so ticking up, finds a forest. Doesn't get to play that, is going to ping Dave for 2.
And remember, Shaundra's worded such that you can't actually play lands because you cast the card.
You have to cast the card.
But the upside is that when you don't, you get to deal 2 damage to your opponent. So slightly new take on the red exile mechanic, because we've seen previous versions of Shaundra, like Shaundra Pyromaster, who you could play lands off her ability.
It's also nice because you have the choice. So if what you really, really wanted was to actually deal the opponent damage, you can do that. I mean, you might leave a good card on the table, but it is your option.
I see a lot of good cards on the table right now. Bristling Hydra, Ishkana, Shaundra. Dave may have a differing opinion there because he's fairly far behind here. He's not unable to block Bristling Hydra and certainly can't interact with it with spells. It's proven to be a real problem for his deck.
All right, so Evan trying to close out this game. He's definitely firmly in the driver's seat, and Dave Shiels sitting at only 6. This game could be over fast.
And Evan's actually got 2 copies of Smuggler's Copter, so if you want to talk about driver's seat, he's actually got a small vehicle theme, which is not normally present in the red-green decks, but because he's not playing any of the pump spells or pummelers, he has room for cards like that.
All right. So he's just playing it as a value card? Like Copter's just a great card, put it in your deck?
Yeah, I mean, if you were to learn anything from Standard, it's that.
Smuggler's Copter's great, just play it.
I mean, we've seen it in blue-white mid-range, we've seen it in T-Merge, we've seen it in red-black and red-white, in black-green, in red-green.
You're just naming color pairs.
I haven't named a color pair that doesn't want to play it, actually.
Fair enough. So both creatures are going to be getting in here. The Servant of the Conduit, obviously smaller than Ishkana, but Dave Shiels is in a position where he's kind of forced to block this Hydra.
And at this point, he's got to be thinking of what gets him out of this. And even if he has a removal spell to kill the Servant, chumps the Hydra, he needs to then untap and then find another answer. Though that Hissing Quagmire that he had to play tapped, that does answer Bristling Hydra fairly well.
All right, so Ishkana getting in front of the Hydra getting a counter.
Dave could pick a fight here. He could use the Grasp of Darkness in his hand on the Hydra. Evan is going to then give it hexproof again in response, and then Dave has looks like another Grasp, and that will actually finish off the Hydra.
Wow, and it looks like all those swamps that he was digging for earlier in the game have paid off.
Yeah, good long-term plan. The downside of all this is that Dave's now at 2, and well.
Oh, and that's the game. So Evan takes the first game here from round 7 at GP Providence.
Yeah, Incendiary Flow has another ability. It can target players, which is something Harness Lightning can't do.
That was a really nice exchange. It kind of looked like Dave might be able to dig his way out of that. Being able to take down that Hydra was big game.
Yeah, that was something he'd been looking to do the entire game and just hadn't managed to do so up until that point, but unfortunately it was a little late.
Let's jump over and see Oliver 2 versus Ricky Chin. Oliver's playing Jeskai Control. Both players are currently sitting at 5-1, and Ricky is on white-blue Flash. This is a smaller version, it seems.
This is actually basically the matchup we just left in our time-shifted match, because Noah Walker's playing the same list as Oliver.
Yeah.
And then Ricky is playing a very similar deck to what Eduardo Sedgwick was playing. And much like when we left them, Oliver looks like he's in pretty good shape here. He doesn't have a direct answer to Smuggler's Copter, but he's got a Gideon, he's got a fair amount of life. So what happens over this next turn cycle is going to determine a lot of how well this game goes.
So a cool fact about Oliver too, actually, and it was last Providence that he got his very first GP top 8, so maybe he's looking to run it back today.
Of course, as soon as I say that things look okay for Oliver, Ricky Chin kills a Spell Queller, putting a Selfless Spirit into play, then plays a Rattle Chains, and then all of a sudden is just crushing Oliver on board.
So the Smuggler's Copter is going to be getting in there, attacking Oliver. It looks like this Rattle Chains might be getting in there too. Yeah, that one's looking to take down the Gideon.
And it's always tricky trying to determine what to send at the opponent versus the Planeswalker. You don't want to overkill Planeswalkers, but you do want to get damage in, though. Actually, it looks like Oliver has no cards in hand, so that decision was quite a bit easier.
Well, the tough thing is if they have one card in hand and it is a removal spell, if you don't manage to kill the Planeswalker in that turn, things can just escalate so poorly for you.
Selfless Spirit makes that a little safer. It's a kind of important card in the blue-white deck for that reason. It just makes your attacks so much safer. It makes your Spell Queller so much better. Also like Ricky's style with a Stasis Snare on either side of the battlefield.
It does look like Ricky was able to loot his way into an Archangel Avacyn, discarding an island. So continues to develop his board presence. And Oliver has a... Wow, that was a very good draw. Torrential Gear Hulk manages to kill that Avacyn with a trigger on the stack. The Selfless Spirit is going to be able to protect it.
And Oliver does gain up to 6 energy there because he just chooses not to spend any energy because it's an indestructible Avacyn. There's no reason to.
All right, so Archangel Avacyn gets to flip here due to that Selfless Spirit dying last turn. Some number of creatures are... Oh, very nice. So some number of creatures might have died, but then the second Archangel Avacyn comes in and protects all of Ricky's creatures. And then we're going to see a big attack. Ricky Chin takes game 1 here from round 7 at GP Providence.
Do you really think it's sporting, though, to play an Avacyn when you have an Avacyn the Purifier in play? Like, I understand that rules-wise it works because they're different Avacyns.
Oh, have I wanted to call a flavor judge on it a million times?
Yeah.
Yes, obviously. To be fair, I actually kind of like the flavor of Archangel Avacyn went insane, and then regular Avacyn comes in and it's like, okay, it's okay. It's okay. Everyone's okay.
Yeah, I guess she does save you in that point. It would just make a lot more sense in a Time Walk match. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, I'm telling you, all these space-time continuum rifts keep happening, and we have multiple Avacyns and general nonsense going on in the feature match.
Look, time travel is a common theme in Magic, so I feel like we're doing a good job by leaning into it.
Don't know about Innistrad, but it's definitely been very prevalent in other sets.
Well, once you have Eldrazi involved, I mean, you can't say they do nothing to the space-time continuum. There's something weird going on there.
Yeah, I will agree with that. I'll allow it. In the meantime, we'll be moving back to our main match. This is Evan Buchholz versus Dave Shiels. So both players are still 6-0 and undefeated in round 7, so off to a very good start at this GP. Evan's playing red-green energy, and Dave is on black-green Delirium. And I had a question for you, Luis. What did you expect coming into this GP, just in terms of what the metagame would be like coming out of the Pro Tour?
So the main 2 takeaways that I got coming out of the Pro Tour was that Aetherworks Marvel decks were bad.
Okay.
Like, you know, Team Channel 4 all played it, and they were not very happy with the choice. Not because the deck was bad itself, it's because it was poorly positioned, and way more people played blue decks. So instead of seeing 20% Aetherworks Marvel, I expect to see much less. That was number 1.
Okay.
Number 2 was that blue decks would get, I think, played pretty heavily because blue-white mid-range did so well at the Pro Tour, and the finals of the Pro Tour was 2 different Torrential Gearhulk control decks. You know, Jeskai in the hands of Carlos Ramon, and Shota playing Grixis. So I expect to see more blue, less Marvel, and then a smattering of decks like red-white vehicles, black-green Delirium, red-green Energy. All the other decks, I didn't expect their percentages to necessarily change that much.
It was definitely interesting because Marvel was such a big deck going into the Pro Tour, and then in terms of actually, getting to the finish line and sealing the deal, it just really wasn't able to do that.
Yeah, Combo Master Matt Nass made his first Pro Tour top 8 thanks to Aetherworks Marvel, but he also 6-0 limited, and the team as a whole did not post an impressive win percentage with Aetherworks Marvel. So it's not a deck I expect to see a lot of, but I do have good news.
All right.
Evan has 1 copy of Aetherworks Marvel in his sideboard.
All right.
And that is sweet.
Do you think it might be coming in here?
It actually might, because, so looking at his deck, he's got this Aetherworks Marvel. It's got to be good for just like the grindy control matchups, and despite the presence of, cards such as Grim Flare, this is an aggro deck against a control deck or a mid-range deck against a control deck. I could see Evan wanting to bring in 1 copy of Aetherworks Marvel to utilize all that extra energy.
I dig it. Servant of the Conduit for Evan and the Grim Flare for Dave Shiels. Now we're going to see a pass back to Dave. So both players off to a pretty good start. They get to develop their board, make sure they're hitting all their land drops. Let's see what Dave gets to follow up with.
So Dave does really want to punch through with Grim Flare because when it hits your opponent, you get a good reward out of it. So it makes sense he'd want to clear the path here.
Indeed he did. I know this Grim Flare is going to be able to get in there. Not only does it fix his draws, he also gets closer to enabling Delirium.
So Dave actually could have gotten a little bit of free information there. Because Grim Flare has trample, what he could have done is just attack with Grim Flare.
Mm-hmm.
And if Evan blocks, then you just cast your Essence Extraction
and
trample
doesn't
over
really
for 2.
Yeah,
and
it
it's
doesn't
exactly
really
the same.
anything.
And if Evan doesn't block, you get to use Grim Flare before deciding whether to cast Essence Extraction or not, or could have played something else that turn. So trample does make that attack. You kind of get a free.
It's a freebie, right?
Yeah, a freebie by attacking there. So that's an interesting play which may come up. And in this particular case, I think Evan would have blocked anyway, so not a huge difference, but it's something to keep in mind.
What would you make if Evan blocks versus doesn't block? Would you just assume that he really values that as a mana creature?
It gives you a little bit more information, yeah, about whether he wants to play like a 4-drop on turn 3, something along those lines. So it is relevant.
So the Grim Flare getting in there is continuing to field Delirium, and Dave is pretty close to hitting Delirium at this point. He also left a card on top, so assuming that the next card he draws is going to be a pretty good one.
So I had a question. If you hit with Grim Flare and leave all 3 cards on top, does that make you lucky that you have 3 good cards, or unlucky that you really use the ability?
I remember you doing this at PAX. And
Well, this isn't about me. This is just in general.
well, okay, so it just happens to be very coincidentally very relevant here. You're going to say that it was very unlucky, right? Because you did that?
That's kind of where
Yeah,
I was
obviously.
going. Look, those who can't handle the swings jump in the booth. That's all I'm saying.
And before jumping in the booth, obviously. Servant of the Conduit coming down for Evan. Providing a little bit more energy. And yeah, we see that Aetherworks Marvel. That would be pretty cool. It looks like there's is that a Fleet Wheel Cruiser?
Yeah, Evan's also got 1 copy of Fleet Wheel Cruiser in his sideboard, too. I like a sideboard. It's just like 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and then 4 Galvanic Bombardments and a couple 2-ofs.
I mean, that's not the card that you really expect coming out of the sideboard for this. So if you're just woefully unprepared for it, you just get to go vroom.
Well, one of the good things about boarding in a bunch of 1-ofs is it does actually make it harder to not only prepare for, but play around. Mm-hmm. Dave might put himself in a position where a Fleet Wheel Cruiser could end the game because he's not expecting 5 points of trample out of nowhere.
All right, so Grim Flare getting in there. Servant of the Conduit is going to block. There is no Delirium quite just yet, so this is just going to be a trade. Assassin Quagmire is a follow-up for Dave, and it looks like a Pilgrim's Eye is going to be making an appearance and helping Dave continuing to make his land drops.
And so even though Dave didn't have Delirium when that happened, he has Delirium now at least. Trading off the Grim Flare puts the 4th type in his graveyard. So future Grim Flares will be 4/4. If he's got an Ishkanah, next turn it will spawn spiders as opposed to last time.
A Tune with Ether, a follow-up for Evan. That will continue to provide some energy and also get him another land.
Yeah, and now that Aetherworks Marvel sideboard actually looks like it could be pretty good. It's not like Evan's got anything gigantic to hit. He's got no Eldrazi in his deck, but still, Marvel, if you use it twice, it's probably gotten 2 good cards and more mana than you spent on it.
And you do get to see a lot of cards when you Marvel, so the odds of him hitting something relevant are pretty good. All right, so Evan tutors up a forest with a Tune with Ether. He's going to go ahead and play it immediately. And a Long Tusk Cub coming down for Evan. Lots of counters to be utilized here.
Yeah, right now it's kind of essentially a 6/6, and you just get to threaten to activate it just by paying 2 energy. So you end up not having to commit to doing that until it matters, but at some point it could just become a 6/6.
There is that hissing Quagmire on the other side of the battlefield that could threaten to block it, but it would mean that it sets Dave back a land drop or so, and with expensive cards in this deck, that's not necessarily what he's looking to do. So Dave deciding what he wants to do for this turn. It looks like the first thing will be that Pilgrim's Eye. Getting aggressive. We're going to see a follow-up of Land and Ishkana.
Can attack with Pilgrim's Eye really be called getting very aggressive? It's extremely aggressive, just smashing.
Is it extremely aggressive to say that he's getting very aggressive?
I don't
Look,
know.
Don't disrespect the Pilgrim's Eye.
You know,
Let it attack.
I've attacked with a lot of Pilgrim's Eyes. I really like that card in Team Merge. And yeah, sometimes you get in there, you fly over for a point. Long Tusk Cub kind of outnumbered now. You know, Ishkana's a lot scarier when she comes with 3 spiders, and it's going to take a while to chew through them with that cub. Even though access to 8 energy means it's kind of gigantic, it's still, at the very least, Dave can just chump, chump, chump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Long Tusk Cub not looking exactly exciting. It was a turn ago. It does look like Evan has Bristling Hydras and some other big energy payout cards in his hand, so...
And one thing that was kind of unfortunate for Evan this game is he had to attune for his 4th land. I don't think he had an actual untapped 4th land, so he had to play a 2-drop on turn 4 along with that attune instead of just playing like a Bristling Hydra last turn or maybe even Fleetwheel Cruiser, which he might have just run out if he had the opportunity.
I think he's going to run it out right now. 4 mana Fleetwheel Cruiser gets to crew itself, and both creatures are going to be attacking.
I have a look at this. If you triple block Fleetwheel Cruiser, it gets to only kill 2 spiders. That's not a bad deal for Dave. I mean, he has to maybe respect...
What about the Long Tusk Cub?
Yeah. The problem is if you triple block, then you're letting the cub through. It's not a disaster to let it through. You could also throw Ishkana on the way, but as we saw last game, I think Dave likes blocking with Ishkana first and then prompting the use of energy. Also, Cub can become a 6/6 max with 9 energy there, which means that a quad block on the Cub would actually take it down if Evan doesn't have Blossoming Defense or Galvanic Bombardment. 2 cards which I think Dave is not going to expect Evan to have access to.
So Dave is going to go for that squad block. Looks like Ishkana's getting assigned first, and rest in peace, Ishkana. Down you go. But so does a Fleetwheel Cruiser. Looks like the Long Tusk Cub isn't going to get any counters, not right now.
Yeah, that just brings Evan to 11 energy. He doesn't have to commit yet. Oh, Evan does actually have Blossoming Defense in hand.
He does?
Another one of.
There you go. From the sideboard?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Well, 1 in the main, 1 in the board, and that means that had Dave gone for a quad block on the Long Tusk Cub, that actually would not have worked out very well.
All right, it looks like Dave does have a Traverse the Ulvenwald in hand and is considering getting something good here. There you see Blossoming Defense. Definitely a role player in these decks.
5 o'clock Turbo Sailed Event.
Both serve as a pump spell and potentially as a counter to some removal spells.
Yeah, this is one of the better aggressive green cards coming out of Kaladesh, and you know, green doesn't actually get that many aggressive cards, but the combination of Blossom Defense, Long Tusk Cub, Grim Flare, you know, back from the previous set, means that you do have a lot of good reasons to play forests and attack your opponent.
Dave is going to play a Hissing Quagmire, and that's pretty much all he's going to do with this turn. I'm going to see a pass back to Evan.
And if I'm Evan, I'm definitely thinking that Dave has removal spells, or you know, maybe just wants to trade Quagmire for a Long Tusk Cub. Has something going on, because it's unlikely there's 3 cards in hand and they're all land.
He also started to tap down his lands to do something and then untapped, so that's you know, that's also a tell. Looks like 3 mana to activate this Hissing Quagmire. All right, Quagmire getting in front of the Cub, and this is nice. He's not forced to commit any energy to this. The trade goes through. So 3 mana for that Tireless Tracker, and if he makes a land drop, there you go. He also gets a clue. A
clue and an energy, what a bargain. It's also works out kind of nicely for Evan because he's got Blossoming Defense up, so Dave has a pretty good chance he goes to try to kill Tireless Tracker because you generally don't want Tireless Trackers to survive. Evan can just Blossom Defense, crack the clue in front of draw a card, maybe hit another land, play another land, get another clue, and continue the cycle.
Dave did draw another copy of Ishkana, though, so...
That does conflict with the plan to cast Grasp. The problem with Dave casting Ishkana, as tempting as that may be, is that it doesn't really let him attack still, because that Tireless Tracker is still going to be there. He might play it because it's good to just spend 5 mana when you've got 5 mana, but I could definitely see him prioritizing killing the Tireless Tracker, which not actually going to work out all that well, given that copy of Blossom Defense in Evan's hand.
All right, so 1 green. Is this a traverse? Indeed it is.
And it is kicked now. It is. It has Delirium, so Dave can get anything. If he wants to hit a land drop, he can actually just get a land and still play Ishkana, but you're trading a Delirium traverse for a land, which you're not always the happiest to do, because the possibilities are basically endless.
They're limited to Ulvenwald, Luis. That's the whole point of the card.
Yeah, anything within Ulvenwald.
Yes.
Grimflare could be a good one because that would let him cast the Grasp and the Grimflare in the same turn.
All right, so it looks like Grimflare is the choice.
I always called Delirium Metalcraft, but then
Metalcraft?
Yeah, for whatever reason, that is what it clues me into. And then they printed Toolcraft Exemplar, which actually does have Metalcraft.
I was going to say, I feel like you just called it kicked.
Well, that too.
All right, so Grimflare coming down. Cracking that clue, and all right, Dave is going to go ahead and try to kill that tracker. It's not going to pan out. Blossoming Defense will defend.
Yeah, and that turn played out fairly well for Evan. The Tireless Tracker, even if he makes a land drop, is still just a 5/4, though. Just can't brawl with those spiders. But I think Evan will still be pretty happy just drawing extra cards off those clues and then developing his board.
I mean, he just continues to do the same cycle, right? Play, make the tracker survive, play a land, get a clue, crack the clue, get another land, crack the clue.
Yeah, Tireless Tracker does its thing. This is actually one of the most fun cards to play with, from Shadows. Just the fact that it works so nicely with itself is really cool.
So I've been using all his mana this turn. The Bristling Hydra coming down.
Looking for the 15 on the 12-sided die there. I do not believe he will be successful. All right, there we go.
It's funny with these constructed decks that, you continue to get so much energy that you run out of space in the 12-sided die. That kept happening at the Pro Tour as well. Okay, so we're going to see a turn back for Dave.
And so Hydra has potential 5 activations here, so Dave's not killing Hydra with spells. He can try to throw creatures in the way, and maybe he'll be able to assemble enough power and toughness, or he can resort to Hissing Quagmire. But getting around Hexproof is going to be pretty difficult there.
Ooh, to the slaughter?
All right, that is one way to kill Hydra with a spell. I stand corrected. Well, I sit corrected because I'm not getting up right now. But but it actually might kill the Hydra because that Tireless Tracker is what's keeping Evan in the game card-wise. So maybe Bristling Hydra will be taken down.
All right, and indeed it does. Bristling Hydra has been chopped up to bits. Has gone to the slaughter.
That poor little sheep just getting humped.
Yep. Hydra, slightly less appetizing, I think. I guess it depends on,
it depends on
your
point
culinary
of view.
choices. Grimflare getting in there. Gets to look at the top 4. And this is really nice for Dave because at this point he gets to basically choose his draws.
Yeah, he's looking at the top 3 there, and he can actually put all in the graveyard because he hit 3 lands. So the only reason to keep one of those lands is if he wants to traverse for Emrakul at some point. But I think he's got a low enough curve. He doesn't really need a 6 land right now.
All right, we're going to see a pass back to Evan. Yeah, and you see how much Evan continues to value the Tireless Tracker because he continues to play lands and continues to draw clues. Oh, there it is.
All right, this is great. So Aetherworks Marvel with 15 energy means at least 2 activations, and by the time you've used 2 activations, you probably have gotten more energy to get a 3rd activation in. So this actually looks like the perfect time for it. You traded a bunch of cards, and now you've got Marvel and a ton of energy.
All right, and it's going to make an appearance. Here we go. Aetherworks Marvel coming in from the sideboard and 50 energy.
And if you're Dave Shiels, you're like,
What?
What is going on here? Aetherworks Marvel, where did that come from? And now you have to worry about like Eldrazi. Not that Evan has any, and if you're Dave, you probably don't expect like a full transformation, but honestly, what if Evan's sideboard was 4 Aetherworks Marvel and like 4 Emrakul?
Well, you see that, and it's like it's panic time, right?
Yeah, I mean, what that is, you know, it's a card that when it's in play, anything could come out of it.
Yeah.
So even a boat like a Sky Sovereign. So there's no way to know what Evan's going to have in play once that Aetherworks Marvel gets activated. I know if I were Dave right now, I would be very worried and somewhat confused about what's going on. Because whenever
Like I felt like I had this grasp in the game, and now I have no idea what's going on.
right, whenever you think you've got a matchup figured out, and Evan looked like a very typical red-green energy deck, all of a sudden they play that card like Aetherworks Marvel and just completely upends your sense of what is actually happening.
Vessel of Nascency coming down for Dave. The Pilgrim's Eye is going to be attacking. Evan says, okay. All right, we're going to see a pass back on. All right, here we go. Activation number 1.
And the funny thing about all this is Evan isn't going to hit anything that costs tons of mana, but it's just like a value card. In
Hey,
fact,
this is just sweet.
what he really wants to hit is just like a Tireless Tracker or Bristling Hydra or something.
Oh, he had a Chandra there.
Ooh. So hitting Shaundra
Incendiary Flow.
is pretty great because she's a very powerful card, especially on a board like this. It is funny, though, that had he activated main phase, then Shaundra would actually get to be used. So he kind of like missed an activation of Shaundra, yet she still might be the most powerful card.
And it looks like that he might be going for that. And yes, Chandra will be making an appearance. Do you think there was more of a downside or an upside to actually doing this on step?
Well, so taking a look at Evan's deck, he's got 2 copies of Nissa and 3 copies of Shaundra, so 5 Planeswalkers. He may not have boarded in all the Nissas, but 5 Planeswalkers up to. That's a lot of Planeswalkers where if you miss an activation, it's kind of unfortunate. So I would have been a little bit incentivized to just activate main phase. The problem is if you hit a creature and then it just gives Dave more information, maybe he makes better attacks, that's not great for you either.
Well, it looks like Evan had a big draw this turn. There's a Verdurous Gearhulk in his hand, which looks like it might be coming down right now.
And Evan's got all these engines going. He's got Tireless Tracker going, so lands replace themselves essentially. The Verdurous Gearhulk is just, well, it's just a gigantic engine. I think just literally that's what a Gearhulk is. Aetherworks Marvel is giving Evan an extra spin every turn of his top 6, and Shaundra lets him, does what Planeswalkers do, lets him just activate every turn for value.
Yeah, and in this case, Chandra says goodbye to the Grim Flayer. Down it goes. Dave Shiels does not get to look at the top of his deck anymore. All right. Gearhulk coming down for Evan. See how he chooses to distribute the counters.
So the tracker's already out of Grasp of Darkness range, so making it big enough to punch through all available blockers is one thing, and then putting at least 1 counter on the Gearhulk to make sure it doesn't get grasped is important. Because you just want to, that's Dave's most common removal spell, so you want to make sure to avoid that if possible.
Yeah, so he's opted for 2 on that Gearhulk in the Tireless Tracker this time, getting in there. And now it's just facing opposing little spiders relative to the tracker size.
Evan also has Harness Lightning X2 in hand, so if Dave were to activate Hissing Quagmire, then that would work out very well for Evan.
It looks like he's just going to crack a Vessel of Nascency.
Unfortunately for Dave, he can't take to the slaughter. If he were able to, that would be great, because he would actually get a Planeswalker and a creature, but Vessel just gets permanence, so Dave's options are somewhat limited.
Yeah, the choices here are Kalitas.
And potentially,
Ishkana.
yeah, Ishkana, but looks like Dave actually wants to hit his land drops.
There you go. So choosing actually to take a land there. He has been missing land drops for quite a bit of turns.
And it all makes sense when you see that Dave already has an Ishkana in hand, so he's got that one that he declined to play a couple turns ago. The problem is Dave's not actually controlling the game. Dave's the control deck, and right now Evan's outcarding him severely. He's using Aetherworks Marvel, Shaundra, and Tireless Tracker every turn. It's like Evan's drawing 4 cards a turn. Though Shaundra is probably getting taken down here depending on how Dave attacks.
Yeah, so the Chandra was not long for this world, but one of the creatures does die in that exchange. And then a follow-up Ishkana. This time Delirium is on. Who gets to rebuild the little family of spiders. A land drop, and now Evan gets to spin the wheel once more. Bristling Hydra, Copter. So already a couple of attractive looking options. Yeah, it looks like Bristling Hydra is a choice.
And that bumps him up to 7 energy again, so now Evan actually could just use Aetherworks Marvel again. And with the Harness Lightning in hand, or 2 copies of it, there's a chance that he even gets more activations.
He's going to go ahead and take down that Ishkana. So it looks like he's looking to get pretty aggressive in the next couple turns. 5 energy left over, also giving him some Hydra activations if he so chooses.
Dave's at 21, but he's not actually that far from just dying. Depending on, if Evan could string together 3 removal spells, he could attack for almost lethal right there, but given all the spiders, I think Dave's going to be able to survive at least 1 turn here.
This is one of the interesting things when you tune into a game of Magic and you're not so familiar with the game, is you take a look at this board and you're like, well, one player's at 12 life, the other one's at 21, and you're like, yeah, but one player is just very far behind and the game might be over very soon.
Yeah, life total's not always the best guide, and in this particular case, they are not telling the whole story.
Wow, Tireless Tracker number 2 for Evan. Tireless Tracker number 1 got so much advantage to the duration of this game.
Yeah, those 3 extra cards are just so huge, and even though Evan has actually run out of lands to play for either tracker, he's still in very, very good shape here. Dave's going to need something on like Emrakul levels of power to come back here, because right now Aetherworks Marvel, the trackers, the Hydra, the Gearhulk, it's all just making it very difficult for Dave to really retain control of this game.
Well, Traverse the Ulvenwald can actually find that copy of Emrakul. Players are starting to count and figure out how many card types are in the graveyard.
I don't think that Dave can cast Emrakul this turn. In fact, I think he's quite far away. So he's trying to survive an additional turn to cast Emrakul, and I don't know if that's going to be possible. I mean, he does have 3 blockers, but Evan has Harness Lightning plus an Aetherworks Marvel spin, because he can go Harness Lightning, spend 2 energy to kill a spider, or 1 to kill a Pilgrim's Eye.
Spin the wheel. Spin
the wheel again, try to find another removal spell. And even if Dave does survive the turn, his board position might degenerate to the point where he's not able to Emrakul and still win, because Emrakul is not an automatic win.
It is a very good way to get yourself back into the game, though. So Evan declines to activate the Marvel at the end of that turn. Instead, he's just going to untap, get more clues.
And combo Aetherworks Marvel with Tireless Tracker. Look at that.
That was a Mondo combo. Looks like a Harness Lightning and another Shaundra in hand for Evan.
So if Evan removes 2 blockers, leaves 3 toughness back, they can block the 2 Tireless Trackers, or a Tireless Tracker and a Bristling Hydra, and that would not be lethal. So it doesn't look like Evan's going to be able to close out the game this turn. Emrakul might hit the board, but if Evan can force Dave to go chump chump, kill your other 2 creatures, and then Emrakul hits the board outnumbered 4-1, there's not very much he can actually do.
Yeah, it looks like this turn might be spent on making sure that the next Emrakul turn isn't a disaster, but he's very much in the driver's seat right now. So spinning the wheel, that's 4, 5, 6. Shudder looks like a very good option, though. Evan does have that second Chandra in hand. Doesn't look like he hit almost anything else, though.
Yeah, you can still go Chandra -3, kill Grimflare, play another Chandra -3, kill a spider. She has enough mana to Harness Lightning, kill a Pilgrim's Eye.
And indeed, that is what is happening. First Chandra takes down that flare. Second Chandra takes down a spider. Bye-bye.
And that leaves Evan just like 2 points of damage short of winning, so he might not need to want to use the Harness Lightning anyway, because he can't quite win this turn, but he just puts Dave in a really, really tough position after this turn.
All right, so Dave figuring out where exactly under the bus these 2 creatures are going to go.
Well, anywhere but the Gear Hulk. The gigantic tireless tracker is a good place to start. Gear Hulk has trample, so you really don't want to block that. But blocking the 9/8 tireless tracker is, I would say, advisable.
Yeah, and the Pilgrim side is getting in front of the bristling Hydra. So he's still taking quite a bit of damage this turn.
And Dave is going to survive, but barely. He can drop to 5 here, and then play Emrakul. Emrakul eats something, and then I don't really see Dave coming off from there. I mean, he's maybe got a chance, depending if he can flip 2 removal spells in a row on Evan's turn and have him kill all his own creatures, but it's going to be difficult.
All right, so Emrakul coming down, and it looks like Evan is just casting that in response, just for the energy.
Yeah, and just to make it so Dave can't harness lightning one of Evan's creatures. But it's still, I mean, Dave's got his work cut out for him here. He's going to be able to do, Evan has enough cards in play that Dave's going to be able to get up to some shenanigans. It's just going to be so hard, though.
So this is Evan's turn, but it's being controlled by Dave. The only card in hand is that Long Tusk Cub, and Dave taking a look at that Aetherworks Marvel, and he is going to have to do a lot here if he wants to survive through the next turn. So it looks like the first thing that Dave will do is cast that Long Tusk Cub for Evan.
And hope that Evan's got a Fumigate in his deck to hit off Aetherworks Marvel.
All right, so Chandra taking up, reveals the land, and there we see it's a handshake. Evan Buchholz takes this 2-0 over Dave Shiels. This improves him to 7-0. He's off to a fantastic start.
Well, best start possible. Well, maybe if you hit something really sweet off Aetherworks Marvel, then you have a slightly better start.
No, this was pretty good.
You have to be satisfied when you board in your one Aetherworks Marvel and just get to go off.
Oh, the Aetherworks Marvel was amazing that game.
It did
so much work.
It did a lot of work.
All right, jumping back to Oliver too and Ricky Chin. So we saw the end of this game earlier. Ricky is up a game here.
Yeah, Ricky had double Avacyn in play. Avacyn Purifier flipped. Archangel Avacyn came down, protected his team. He attacked for lethal. And now we've got a lot going on.
Take a look at that spicy one. There's a Thalia's Lancers there that might have gotten
pretty good chance it picked up Avacyn or Linvala, one of the two. So looks like there's been Linvalas on both sides because Oliver too also. Actually, no, it looks like that was just his Linvala. I see a red sleeve. Aha. All right, so Oliver had Linvala. That's why he's got the Angel token. He's also got double Spell Queller. So we've got a bit of a standoff, but Oliver does appear ahead, except for the fact that Oliver's at 2. And if Avacyn flips, then Oliver dies. So yeah, Oliver's got his work cut out for him here.
It doesn't look like Ricky has anything in hand that would cause a creature death.
Ricky actually has Bruna the Fading Light in hand, but can't get back Selfless Spirit. She gets back Angels or Humans, so not quite there. But what it does mean is that Ricky can make kind of reckless attacks with his other creatures and just hope that Oliver blocks such that one of them dies.
Yeah, this really puts him in a tough spot with how he has to block. So it looks like the Gearhulk's getting in front of the Lancers, the other two creatures in front of that Avacyn, attempting to take it down.
Yeah, Weaver Lightning having reached pretty crucial here because Avacyn actually dying means that Oliver doesn't mind killing the Lancers. So this didn't work out great. Ricky does have Bruna, so when she gets played, she can bring back Avacyn, but Ricky essentially traded Avacyn for an Angel token.
Yeah, that is basically what has happened, and Nathalia's Lancers also dies in that exchange, but Bruna here triggers, getting that Avacyn back. Potentially the Lancers as well. It is going to get the Lancers.
Active player, please finish your turn.
And
So
because
Bruna providing a lot of card advantage here.
yeah, the cycle of Lancers get Bruna, Bruna get Lancers is a pretty nice one.
All right, so we're approaching the end of this round too. Players have about 5 minutes left, and if they push it onto a game 3, that's going to be a problem. But it looks like Ricky's just trying to take it home.
I think because they have only 5 minutes left, Ricky's strategy is to try to win this game and win the match.
I'm watching you.
Oliver currently at 2 here. Makes it a little difficult to navigate. He's got Negate in hand. He's got Immolating Glare, so he's got answers, but You always feel, first of all, you always feel like you're at the brink of disaster and you have a bunch of spell callers in play. Like a Declaration in Stone could just lead to some bad things.
Yeah.
Second of all, Oliver just has to dance around all these different cards that Ricky has that could squeeze through those last 2 points of damage.
So it looks like Gearhulk and that Gideon are getting in there. Man, this is a complicated board state to navigate. All right, so Gideon gets in there. The Thraven Inspector jumps in front of that Gideon. No other attacks from Oliver.
And Oliver's actually in a really bad position here in the sense that it's unlikely he wins this match. He might be able to lose the match, and he could almost certainly draw the match if he wins this game. But winning this game and then winning the next game with now close to 4 minutes left is going to be a challenge. Uh-oh, we're going to see Brisella, I think.
Yes, I think we're going to see some meld action. This is sweet. Let's see if Oliver has no way to respond, and here comes Brisella.
Attention players, Kayla.
Oh, this is dope.
William Johnson. Kayla Kamali and William Johnson.
All right, so we're going to take a look at Brisella. She's got a lot of abilities. One of the main ones being that Oliver can't cast spells that cost 3 or less, so that actually shuts off a lot of the cards he could play, and he has to face down this gigantic flying lifelink creature.
All right, so Oliver's going to follow up with a Gideon emblem. And all he can do is pass back to Ricky. So for everyone at home, and just to keep track, Brisella does a lot of things, but namely among them, she flies. She has First Strike, Vigilance, Lifelink, and what you mentioned, opponents can't cast spells with converted mana cost 3 or less. So she kind of does it all. She's also a 9/10, FYI.
It's pretty impossible to beat in combat and very difficult to kill with spells. She's a nightmare to deal with. Also, she's just gigantic. Look at how big the card is on the board. It's just so great just seeing a gigantic card on the board like that.
It is very sweet. And then we see the hand. Ricky gets to take this match. And they were so close to going to time. That could have been bad for them if they actually got a draw.
Yeah, getting a draw on day 1 is not generally where you want to be, especially since the cut to top 8 is generally X and 2. But Brisella, Voice of Nightmares, does in fact live up to her name and kind of takes down Oliver too, despite the fact that he had a lot of stuff in play. Just not a whole lot matches up well against a 9/10 with all those abilities you mentioned: Flying, First Strike, Lifelink, Vigilance, Trample, Fading, Hexproof, Echo, or something like that.
You just have a little checklist so you make sure that you check them all. And that's going to do it here from GP Providence. We'll be coming back with you with more matches soon.
Up your game with Ultra Pro Magic the Gathering accessories. Find the best magic art on card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and more. Visit ultrapro.com to learn more and find a retailer near you.
Put your game to the test at a Grand Prix. These Magic celebrations are headlined by 2-day open tournaments with the best players in your region as well as top Magic pros from around the world. Find an upcoming Grand Prix near you at magic.wizards.com/Grand Prix.
Hello there, welcome back to the booth here at Grand Prix Providence. Marshall Sutcliffe with Jacob